So The Batman's been out for a few weeks now, and I think it's safe to say that it lived up to or even surpassed the expectations. As a big fan of Batman, especially the Arkham games, it's awesome to finally see the detective side of Batman on the big screen. One of the first things I usually do after watching a movie I enjoy is researching how they made it and seeing if there was anything interesting or out of the ordinary during its production. And to my surprise, The Batman didn't have the most clean and straightforward production as the final product might make you believe. This movie had a very long development and was supposed to be entirely different than what it came out to be. And by the time they finally got filming underway, COVID came into play, making things much more difficult. So let's dive into some crazy things that happened during its production. But before that, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. We're back to releasing videos much more regularly and we don't want you to miss out. So with that out of the way, cue the intro. It feels like we've been hearing about this new Batman standalone movie for some time now, and that's because we have. We first heard about it in 2014, but back then, it was completely different. Beginning development in 2013, the standalone Batman was supposed to have Ben Affleck direct, produce, co-write, and star in it. This movie was supposed to be more tied in with the DC Extended Universe where we first saw Ben Affleck's Batman in 2016's Batman vs. Superman, and then later in the 2017 Justice League. The first draft of this film was actually finished by Ben Affleck and Jeff Johns in March of 2016. The plot was heavily influenced by the Nightfall comics as well as both the Arkham Asylum comics and video game. The plan was to have an action-driven film where we'd see Deathstroke cause a breakout at the asylum. There was even a post-credit scene in Justice League that was supposed to set up this film, but it ended up being removed when plans for this movie fell through. The scene was later re-added by Zack Snyder for his cut of the Justice League. The plot was compared to Dave Fincher's The Game, and it was on track to be filmed in mid-2017 for a 2018 release. But in January 2017, Ben Affleck stepped down as the director, stating that he didn't think he would enjoy directing it. Soon after that, he dropped out of writing the script and then was dropped from the lead role when Matt Reeves took over. In a 2020 interview, Affleck said that he stepped down to a few reasons. Those reasons being his divorce with Jennifer Garner, the problems with Justice League's production, not enjoying playing the character, and his alcohol problems. February 23, 2017. Matt Reeves was hired to direct and write the Batman film. Being a huge Batman fan, he didn't want to use Ben Affleck's script, instead wanting to take Batman in a completely different direction. Originally, there were ties with the DC Extended Universe, but those were dropped and a younger Batman was the focus of the story. Hence, a younger actor would be needed. Batman movies have always been full of memorable characters. You even remember the characters in the worst Batman films, although sometimes for the wrong reasons.
You are not sending me to the cooler.
It's very important to nail the casting, especially for the role of Batman, where the actor will be remembered for both their Batman and Bruce Wayne scenes. In May of 2019, we had these actors competing for the role of Batman. Robert Pattinson did have an edge over the others as Reeves was writing the script with him in mind after seeing Good Time. Reeves didn't think Pattinson would be interested as he seemed to be staying away from bigger franchises after his experience with Twilight, but it was actually quite the opposite. Pattinson was a lifelong Batman fan and was interested in the role a year in advance. As a side note, Warner Bros must be pretty relieved that they didn't go with Armie Hammer as Batman. With all of his cannibal accusations, I'm sure it would have delayed this film so they could either recast or even scrap it entirely. By the end of May, Pattinson got the role of Batman, beating out frontrunner Nicholas Hoult. When it was revealed who'd be the new Batman, many fans were furious due to only knowing Pattinson as the Twilight actor. They even made a petition on change.org for them to recast the role. But for those of you who don't know, fans were also outraged when Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker for The Dark Knight. So I don't think the studio was too worried about fans' reactions. Pattinson was working on Tenet during this time where he was receiving tips from Christopher Nolan on how to play Batman. The rest of the casting was actually pretty straightforward. Jonah Hill was in the early talks to either play Riddler or the Penguin, but the plans fell through as they couldn't decide which role he'd be good for, and his requested salary was too high. Zoe Kravitz got the role over all these actresses, and this was actually her second time playing Catwoman after voicing her in the Lego Batman movie.
Catwoman! Meow meow, you're in! Meow meow.
The costumes in this film really stood out. They were very grounded and memorable, and I think the new Batsuit might be my favorite one yet. When designing the Batsuit, mobility and practicality was prioritized. It needed to be something easy to fight in and also needed to look like Bruce made it himself. The Batsuit was actually much more comfortable than Pattinson expected, because before the final suit, he had to endure some quite uncomfortably hot screen tests wearing Val Kilmer's Batsuit and George Clooney's cowl. One of the first tips Christian Bale gave Pattinson as a veteran Batman actor is to figure out the right way to relieve yourself when in the suit. And let's talk a little bit about the Riddler. The Riddler's costume was inspired by the Zodiac Killer's sketches. The green coat was used to stay true to Riddler, but a combat mask was added. Paul Dano even added plastic wrap under the mask as he believed this was something the character would do to not take any chances leaving his DNA on the scene. He probably regretted this as it ended up being very hot and hard to breathe in, stating that he had trouble sleeping those nights due to the heat and lack of oxygen throughout the day. Colin Farrell, though, was probably the most unrecognizable of the cast as the Penguin. It took 2 to 4 hours to apply the prosthetics, and Farrell chose to go with a fat suit over actually gaining weight as he had health issues when he gained weight for the show The Northwater. For the Penguin, they went with a much more realistic, old-school gangster look, dropping the classic monocle and top hat to match the more realistic tone of the film. So with the cast and costume set, the Batman was planned to start filming soon, but not everything could be planned for. After a long time in early development, filming started in January of 2020, but there was one thing that stood in their way: COVID. You'd think they weren't affected as much after seeing the final product, but COVID actually caused a lot of issues for them. After just 2 months of filming, COVID halted production of the film and any other movie being filmed in England. Originally thought to only be a 2-week suspension, it was announced that it would be suspended indefinitely with the belief that they'd be back in mid-May. By this time, a quarter of the filming was done and Matt Reeves was using the time off to plan the rest of the filming and explore the tone of the film. There was also some sad news on set when during the suspension on April 1st, Andrew Jack, the production dialect coach, died from COVID. By May, the UK government revealed their plans to get the film studios back up and running with required safety measures. The Batman was approved for a July start, but started filming on September 3rd. This didn't last long though. 3 days into filming, Robert Pattinson tested positive for COVID. Everyone had to quarantine for 2 weeks, except for the set and production teams. Matt Reeves became worried, saying, "If I go down, we're not going to finish this movie." So he took extra precaution to avoid unnecessary contact. He pretty much became a Riddler impersonator, wearing a head covering, a mask, and even ski goggles, as Dr. Fauci mentioned covering your eyes can reduce the chance of getting COVID. The cast had to live close to the sets in England and not leave the area until production was finished. Production was described as very impersonal. There was very limited interaction on set. The cast and crew were split into groups, and the groups were only allowed to interact between themselves to avoid unnecessary contact. Some of the lead actors even wore earpieces to receive direction from Reeves without having to be in direct contact with him. Some scenes used remote control cameras. Pattinson said it felt very odd as there was barely anyone on set during those scenes. COVID ended up causing this film to be delayed twice. When production was first suspended, thinking it would only last for a few weeks, the release date was pushed back to October 1st, 2021. But with how long it took to get back and the difficulties of filming during COVID, it got pushed again to March 4th of 2022. In this section, I wanted to list some of the cool facts about filming and editing that didn't really fall in line with the other sections. So here are some quick fire facts related to filming and editing. The working title of this film was Vengeance. The locations filming took place were in London, Glasgow, Liverpool, and Chicago. The cemetery scenes were shot at the Glasgow necropolis, and that was where we saw the first on-set pictures of the Batsuit. A majority of the filming was done in Liverpool, and it was there where COVID stopped them. Some notable places filming took place in were St. George's Hall, Enfield Cemetery, and the Royal Liver Building. And after coming back from COVID, they finished off in Liverpool and did their final filming in Chicago for a lot of the stunt scenes and exterior shots of Gotham.
Chicks dig the car.
The Batmobile chase scene was the first scene sound edited. For the engine sounds, they went with the Ford big block engine. And for the supercharger, they took a World War II Jeep sound and reversed it. As done with many popular films, Warner Bros. Held test screenings for The Batman in late 2021 where the audience had no idea what they were about to see. And if you thought the movie was long at release, the cut they showed at the screenings was 4 hours long. Although it wasn't edited properly and much longer than Reeves wanted it to be, the audience really enjoyed the complex narrative. So fingers crossed that someday we'll get to see the director's cut of the film. Okay, that's everything. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning about Batman's production as much as I enjoyed researching it. From watching the movies alone, I couldn't tell how isolating the film process was. The actors had great chemistry on scene, especially Robert Pattinson and Jeffrey Wright. The relationship between Batman and Gordon felt very natural, and it's one of the parts I'm looking forward to the most in the sequels. I really hope there will be sequels. If you haven't subscribed to FilmStack, and I know most of you watching haven't, make sure to subscribe and leave a like if you like this video. It helps the channel out a lot. And if you have any cool Batman facts, and they don't have to be about this movie specifically, leave a comment down below. And until next time, have a good one.